Hi, my name is Maxime Lamothe-Brassard. Thanks for joining us today. We will be talking about LimaCharlie, particularly about how we can transform MSSP operations. And when we say MSSP, we kind of mean incident response and MDR and all of the categories that kind of go around that. Essentially, how we can deploy using LimaCharlie in minutes and scale without limits. So let's get a little bit into it. First, who I am. I am Maxime Lamothe-Brassard. My background is in cybersecurity. So I started my career in national defense in Canada, into the intelligence sector. I've also worked at early CrowdStrike and Google Internal Security, and finally part of the founding team of Chronicle Security. I'm the founder and CEO of LimaCharlie. So let's get into it. So service providers today. There's several different dynamics that are at play. So let me kind of start with what I think are some of the more important ones. So EDR becoming competitors. Really what that means is that there's a lot of cybersecurity vendors today that are building capabilities. They're a vendor, they're selling those capabilities. And we are hearing more and more about service providers getting squeezed. It's simply because these giants someday either already have a managed service, or someday these giants just turn around to one side and just by mistake, they don't even realize it, destroy entire service providers because of their size. They don't have any incentive, particularly to go and work with partners. Their fundamental belief is that they are the end all be all of cybersecurity. And we're seeing more and more of this become a problem. The typical kind of situation that we see is cybersecurity service company does incident response and uses that in order to get new customers for the MDR, the recurring revenue. And they do that quite successfully. And then someday their vendor that they are kind of stuck with decides that actually, no, they do better at MDR than you. And so you're using their product for IR. And all of a sudden, the moment you try to convert those customers to MDR, we hear that the top vendor just goes in and essentially poaches those customers over. So it's a very, very unhealthy relationship, right? The idea that you're competing with your own vendor is not normal. So we're seeing a lot of pressure there. It's a very competitive market. In addition to that, we're seeing a lot of operational challenges. So I've heard some really scary stats around service providers, like 30% of the average service provider of the staff is there in order to support the infrastructure. So it's not there in order to support, getting income in the door or really doing the product, but it's just keeping the lights on for infrastructure. That is really, really high. The other super frequent problem we hear about is scaling, meaning that, a couple of people decide to go start a service provider, run this, get several customers, things are going well, and then they hit that one more customer. And all of a sudden, this all open source stack or this, several vendors stitched together stack just starts completely breaking down. And these are the typical things that you don't hit until the day where you hit it. And now you find yourself in a position of either letting down a customer or not even being able to onboard a customer until you pay a lot of technical debt trying to, scale up your data lake or connect this thing to this thing, or discover that your vendor worked great when you had 10 tenants, but then the 11th one, actually, they need to give you a whole new console. And now you realize, oh my God, I'm going to have to maintain, dozens and dozens of consoles for all of my customers. So it becomes a nightmare to scale. This last one particularly relates to multi-tenancy. And I will kind of say that where we see that the most often is when multi-tenancy is an afterthought, right? You are going to go and talk to a big vendor, and they've been selling to the biggest logo in enterprise because that's really what they care about. And then they kind of discovered, oh yeah, there's this service provider thing. Like, oh yeah, it's all the same. They don't even realize there's a difference. They're just trying to sell you the same as they sell everybody else. And, it turns out that if you are trying to build and scale a service provider, do this at large scale, you can't just use the same tools, right? In the same way that, I don't know, like a garage chain just can't go to, to Walgreens or name your pharmacy and like buy a tiny screwdriver and say, oh, this is what I'm going to use everywhere. Like, that's not how that works. So, resource constraints, I mentioned around 30% dedicated to infrastructure, and that's just kind of the level one side of this, right? Then you have to ask yourself, how many resources am I dedicating to running processes that, yes, are very directly related to me running my service, but that I still have to do manually every time, right? How much time does it take you to onboard a new customer? It's probably not trivial, and it probably involves a few hundred clicks at the very least. So it's really important for the service providers today to leverage technologies and stacks that are specifically designed for their problems, meaning the way that they operate. It is not the same thing to run an SMB security as to say, I'm going to run that one SMB across 500 customers is day and night. So you really need to have something technologically that is well aligned. You need something that is also well aligned from a business perspective, right? You don't want to be in competition. So all these things kind of put together, right? The picture that I'm trying to describe means that you need a new type of offering. Like you need a new type of vendor, like you need a new structure to help you go and do this thing. And that's where we come in. That's what we've decided to build. We call that the SecOps cloud platform. And we are very clearly, this is not a side effect. This is not an afterthought. This is the thing that we're building. Essentially, we're kind of building like a cloud provider for cybersecurity capabilities, right? So what that means is that we are going from a world where you might have a bunch of different products all in silos. Either you've bought all these products independently, or maybe you're using one of those quote unquote, platforms that really at the end of the day is the same products just pre-bundled under one web portal, and like they called it a day. So, partial points. We're going from a world like that and into a world where we have specifically built it to be compatible, to work well for service providers. And I want to reiterate that point. The SecOps cloud platform is a capability for service providers. It is not a capability that we are trying to sell to everybody and all of your customers directly, and we really want to try to get around you or anything like that. We are purpose-built to help you get better margins, you scale easier, you offer new products. This is really what we're targeting. So what that means is we start with this foundation of a data lake and a data pipeline, right? Like data is kind of the blood of your operations. So being able to do that across the board, you're seeing a theme here of Lego blocks that we keep reusing. This is very purposeful, and it's because if you innovate by buying 100 different companies and slap them under that web portal, what you're going to end up with is very disjointed capabilities. Yeah, you might, check that compliance box until, the actual people that need to use the product start to use it, and then they hate their life. Instead, what we're doing is we are building everything like a cloud provider. We're kind of building everything to be cohesive so that my incident response capabilities fundamentally talk the same language as my SOAR capabilities, as my EDR capabilities. and you're not just trying to stitch things that don't work together. You are in one ecosystem just trying to operate this, and it pays off tremendously. So you can see multi-tenant is another core piece of the puzzle here. Multi-tenant from day zero. There is nothing you can do in LimaCharlie without being in multi-tenant in a way. So that means everything around the multi-tenancy. That means multi-tenancy from billing. It means multi-tenancy from a management of configurations. It means multi-tenancy from infrastructure as code, just across the board from IAM as well, like permissions, right? Being fundamentally built to enable those. And the last bit that you see on top is API and add-ons, because API is a straightforward thing. Like a cloud provider, we know that we are not the only thing. LimaCharlie does not believe that it is everything in cybersecurity and everything else should die. LimaCharlie believes that it has a place in cybersecurity to deliver these capabilities in a way that service providers can go and pick them up and assemble them and build offerings, build products, go to market, get better margins, all of that stuff. So it means that we need to have an API very first. Everybody says API first. In our case, it's very true. We have more APIs than we have web app, that we have UI. The add-ons is equally important here. Again, LimaCharlie is not everything to everybody. Instead, we make this whole stack, this superpower that is LimaCharlie, available to anybody that wants to use it for whatever purposes that they want to use it. So it's extremely easy for people to build integrations, build automations, and you'll see that we have a ton of those already on the platform that mean that you can just go and get all kinds of advanced capabilities very, very easily, very fast. They're optional. We're not here to spend 3 months trying to figure out exactly how many dollars we can get out of you. Our pricing is transparent, and it means you also pay for what you use for the usage. So you're not stuck, paying for some crazy bundle that some salesman sold you for a 3-year contract. Like, you can just use what you need. So here's a little bit of an overview before we get into more of a demo. I apologize, I talk a lot. Let's go. So just kind of showing off a little bit the capabilities. This is just an idea. This is to give people an idea of where we're headed. We do have a native EDR. So that means regardless of the platform you're in, now you have an EDR that is in your back pocket. You have your EDR in your back pocket. It is not some vendor's EDR that's going to try to poach a customer. It's your capability. If you don't deploy us, if you don't stay in an environment, then we won't stay there, right? We are an infrastructure provider. We just give you the tools. So we have this amazing EDR, extremely performant, extremely fast. We have third-party EDR and EPP because, again, we know we're not everything. So a lot of service providers that use LimaCharlie, yes, they have their EDR, but they also say, talk to a new customer that says, look, we've got Defender, we're in the middle of a contract, we want to stick with that. So you can connect that in, no problem. It is fully supported, and you get all of the value of the platform. We have cloud platforms. So again, cloud providers are bigger and bigger in the technology landscape these days. So we're compatible with all of them, getting all kinds of audit logs and all kinds of logs and interactions and listing. Everything just connects into LimaCharlie. And finally, kind of related, we have the SaaS. So that is a huge list of SaaS providers out there that have some form of audit logs. It's becoming, I don't have to repeat myself, but it's becoming extremely critical. We see a lot of attacks that end up coming from indirectly a lot of those third-party vendors. And so with LimaCharlie, with nothing, no overhead, nothing, you can just go and connect all of these. You can detect, whatever you'd like for a lot of these. You can get, rule sets right off the bat and start offering as a managed service to your customers. I'll touch up on that a little bit after. So it's very, very powerful. So let's talk stories a little bit. So right before starting this webinar, what I did is I clicked a button on our end. What that button did is it created a tenant. So that took a couple of seconds. Then it used infrastructure as code. And you'll see what that looks like. It used infrastructure as code to automatically take a template that I had built ahead of time on a previous tenant in a previous webinar. And it applied it to my tenant. That was maybe a minute to apply that. And then it did the really heavy lifting, which is spinning up virtual machines in Google Cloud to onboard into this test tenant. So what I wanted to drive to here is that what we're looking at, what I'm trying to replicate is this experience of creating a new tenant. Maybe you just got a call to do an incident response, right? Usually you have a couple of different choices. Maybe one of those for you is, well, I've got to call my vendor, and then I got to make sure that this vendor, is able to go and provision this tenant for me. That takes them 2 days to do, and I'm just wasting time. And instead, I can just, with LimaCharlie, I could have done this interactively. But if you do more than one incident response, you should not do twice this creation of a tenant manually. You can use infrastructure as code. So that allowed me to just spin it up. And I don't know, I think it's 5-10 minutes later. I have my test tenant here. You can see I've got a bunch of different things connected into this test tenant through my infrastructure as code. We've got some Windows, we've got some Linux. I've got a bunch of other types of webhooks and other platforms and other things that I'll talk about. But the first thing that I wanted to talk about is, the boring part, but I think building a service provider has some boring parts that are pretty important. And one of those is the ability to sync your infrastructure as code. So let me get here into what we call Git Sync. So Git Sync is a core LimaCharlie capability that allows you as a service provider to go from nothing all the way to running, what some people call GitOps, right, across all of your tenants. So to describe a little bit GitOps, right, the idea behind GitOps is something that we've borrowed from the DevOps folks in IT. It's this idea that when you have more than a couple of tenants that you want to try to configure, if you're trying to keep cohesive the environment that you're putting to your customers, it becomes exponentially more difficult. A great way to do this is to use revision control, right? Something like Git to go and manage that configuration at scale. Traditionally, it's a huge luxury for most companies. For most service provider, it's something that they've spent weeks or months trying to build. For LimaCharlie, it is now something that you can get in a couple of minutes. The way that we've done this is through our Git Sync extension. So it's an add-on. It's free. You can go just provide it an SSH key, and I give it, in this case, I'm using GitHub. You could use any Git hosting. I point to it, and I describe what exactly I want to sync. I can push to Git, so which would say, hey, take this tenant. Maybe it's my first tenant. I've configured it. Everything's good the way I like it. Push to Git. It's going to push all of this into a repo, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. And all of your configuration is well structured, is ready to go. Then I can pull from Git, which is take what's in the repo and apply it to my organization, my tenant. I can do this on a scheduled job. So I can say, hey, every 24 hours, I want to go and do this. So the moment that I do this, the moment that I start using this, my second tenant, the next IR maybe that I get, I need to do next to nothing. I can just essentially copy paste to, in Git, the new configuration, and I can just say, yep, load it, go. And in a minute or two, you're going to have your whole tenant loaded. It's not just a bit here and there. Infrastructure as code truly is baked into LimaCharlie. So it's everything that you'll see in LimaCharlie. So I wanted to start there just to really start on the note of, hey, this is going to be different. when you are doing something like incident response, but it might also be a new MDR customer. The experience from the very beginning is completely different. Because I can go and I can, look at my list of sensors, or EDRs, and it's all connected. I didn't have to, some vendors, you got to wait 30 minutes for sensors to start showing up. For me, the moment I clicked on that MSI, about 5 seconds later, I have my EDR showing up. So like right from the get-go, you will see that it's a very different kind of experience. This is the onboarding, like the inception here. So the next, let's look at the next part of it. So this was a deployment, and actually in the configuration. So deployment, right? Create tenants through the API interactively through SDK, super fast, at will. Configuration, again, infrastructure as code, just solved. I guess I did not show you what that looks like. So let's look. So here's a dummy Git repo with with one tenant loaded in, and I can see all of the components of my infrastructure that are all split up in different files. So I could go into any of those. I'm not 100% sure what is populated in this particular tenant. Here we go. And I can look at, my detection rules, like everything is stored in this configuration. It is dead easy. The next part, let's talk about automation. So on the topic of automation, I want to cover a few different things. Let me flip back here. So as a service provider, right? Yes, you're going to have, the classic, I guess, responding to alerts, but there's a lot of other types of automations that, somebody doing this in enterprise may not have to do. Some of these are going to be pretty common. And that's great. But some of these are going to be common as in you need to do this for every tenant, but also unique per customers, right? If you are already, a service provider, you know that every customer is different. You can't just have everything cookie cutter. That's why we have infrastructure as code, so that you can, maintain sanity in how you manage all of this. So automation becomes critical. LimaCharlie has a few different automation capabilities that are worth highlighting. First one is our automation rules. I won't spend much time in this because it's just a set of rules that, either come pre-configured, you can apply to your tenant, or that you create yourself manually that automate things in your platform. If I see this, do that. It's not rocket science. Let's look at other capabilities, though, that are a lot more interesting. Playbooks. So in our opinion, right, if I go back to kind of our thesis of there's a bunch of silos, playbooks, something like a Python playbook, is not a critical cutting edge piece of technology anymore. It should be a single feature. And that is how we interpret it, and that is how we put it into effect. So what we've done is here we have the ability, you have the ability to create Python playbooks into the platform. They are managed through infrastructure as code, so you can manage them at scale really, really well. They're extremely open-ended, meaning you can automate anything that you'd want. In fact, when you run a specific playbook, as you run the playbook, we give you in that playbook a instance of the SDK, meaning you can interact with LimaCharlie from that playbook. The credentials, everything's automated for you. This is not like, hey, I want playbooks. I need to go and talk to this one vendor and do a month of professional services so they customize what I need for me to be able to maybe use it. And then 2 weeks later, I am able to get access to a demo and say, no. This is, you get started, that capability is there, fully formed. You can use it. And because we think about all this like Lego blocks, this isn't, the Python playbook, it doesn't play with anything else. Not only does it play with, our SDK or our API, but it can also be triggered by everything into LimaCharlie. Meaning if you have an automation rule that says, if I see this thing on an endpoint or on Office 365, I want to trigger that playbook. You can do that trivially. So I picked this one example to show you particularly because I was playing with this. I'm a security engineer by profession. In my history, I built LimaCharlie the way that I would have always wanted, a platform that just gives me the capabilities and gets out of the way. And so I was playing with LimaCharlie, and I was thinking, hey, what's an interesting thing that I can do with playbooks? And also, what's an interesting thing that I can do with our newest capability? And that newest capability is AI agents. So the AI agents capability is quite simple. So we're not here to tell you, hey, we have this magical AI agent and it solves all your problems and it works magically on everybody in the whole planet at the same time in the same way. Because, we respect you more than that. We are also not saying, hey, we have this magic agent, and if you give us 3 months of professional services, we can get it customized and ready to go. Instead, we're kind of taking this approach where we wanted to make the capability available to you. We're likely going to, build more in the future, but this allows you to go and quite simply describe an AI agent that you would like in LimaCharlie. And all things AI these days work with a prompt. This is the same thing. In this case, very simple example, I'm just telling it, hey, I want you to, be good at summarizing alerts. I want you to take an alert in LimaCharlie and summarize it for me, give me next steps. I could also tell it, hey, by the way, you have access to all my other alerts, and you have access to all the history for that endpoint. So when you investigate, you want to summarize an alert, take a look at the history and the other alerts and use that in your context. So this is, the buzzword these days, agentic, meaning this can fully leverage all APIs in LimaCharlie. But in this case, I'm keeping it simple. I'm just saying, summarize me this and give me next steps for it. So I've got playbooks. I've got this agent. All of this is Lego blocks. So what I am doing is, if I go back to my playbook, is I built a playbook that just simply I can trigger from any alert that I want. And then I asked another AI to give me a Python code to generate a PDF from Markdown, and then to send that through SMTP to my customer. And so it gave me that code. I put it in a playbook, and here all I'm doing before then is I'm calling my AI agent and I'm telling it, hey, AI summarizer, summarize me this alert. And then I take this alert and then I give it to my playbook and I say, hey, make this into a PDF and then send that to that one customer. The customer email is managed through secrets, which is done through infrastructure as code. So I think you can start to see all of the Lego blocks start to play in a way that is, yes, extremely powerful, also really easy to get going. You don't have to be a master of all of this. You can learn to play with, those Lego blocks very at your own time and still get a ton of value right away from it. So this is the type of thing that, obviously this is a fictitious example, but to show you that a lot of the tasks that as a service provider you might have to do manually, like, providing some kind of summary from an alert, or summary for activity. Maybe you want to send your customer a daily summary of activity on the platform. So you can do that super easily. In fact, that's the type of thing we hear a lot from service providers, that as they see that squeeze from vendors, they have to show their value kind of constantly to the customer. So you really want to find ways to make yourself more unique and to provide more touch points to your customers, provide more value. And the way that you do that isn't by delegating and hoping, praying for the best that the vendor is going to do the best thing for you, but instead to just go and be able to very quickly and easily do that. So this is a big part of the LimaCharlie automation story. Visibility. I've kind of been skirting around it, so far, but hey, okay, LimaCharlie, you've got all these things. Do I get visibility? Well, do you get visibility? Yes. You are not dealing with an EDR provider and another provider for this and then another provider for that. Or maybe you're lucky. Maybe you have this, an XDR provider that puts it all together. Very often, though, the way you work with the different sources, what you can do, how you can alert, all these things are different in depending on the data source. So in our case, we wanted to make this an easy story for your analysts or the people working for you as a service provider. What you don't want is to be stitching 50 different vendors and training all of your analysts on 50 different technologies, plus another 50 ones when you need to, get the data and go and enrich it or do these things, right? You want to have a single cohesive story, train up an analyst, and that person is able to give you services, EDR on endpoint on Windows, all the way to, Office 365 or looking at firewall logs or automating detection on Okta. It should all be the same, right? So this is what you get in LimaCharlie. So, if I hop into an example here of my EDR, this box is connected to the internet. So you see a lot of Windows event logs, people trying to log in, but we give you all of the telemetry. We are also not in the business of telling you exactly what you ought to have the right to, right? If your vendor tells you, no, you can't have your data, or yes, you can have it, and it'll cost you $100,000 a year, they are not on your side, right? They are a vendor that believes you should not exist, and they want to make it as hard as possible for you to get access to it. So LimaCharlie is the other way around. We are more than happy to give you your data. And so you can have full access to all of the visibility on all of the things, all of this built in. So extremely powerful EDR in LimaCharlie. But also you could go and access, I don't know if I actually have a really handy example here. I thought I saw Okta. Yes, so some Okta log. Let's see if we have anything so far. Yeah, beautiful. So let's look at Okta. And we can look at all of the telemetry. You can alert, you can automate exactly same way on the same platform. So the amount of visibility that you get within LimaCharlie is unparalleled. You can do this across everything. The revenue opportunities is kind of related to what I just mentioned. And I really wanted to call it out specifically. Because as I mentioned, right, as a service provider, you're always trying to do and offer more things. One of these things is to be able to say, at some point, if not already, you will have a customer that asks you, hey, can you monitor my Office 365, right? And you kind of want to have two dimensions of answers to this. The first one is, can I actually onboard this data? With LimaCharlie, the answer is always yes. So, hey, that customer, maybe they don't want you to manage it, but they want you to have it. We've heard of quite a bit of that. You can always, yes, have access to it. The other one is, let's say in that Office 365 example, well, do you have, the detections that are ready for Office 365? Do you have the knowledge internally? Sometimes you will have the knowledge internally, but there's a gap between saying, hey, I've got somebody that knows what they're doing and selling the service. With LimaCharlie, you're able to do a lot more in that way by doing things like leveraging our marketplace. So I can come in and I can say, hey, here's a managed rule set of detections for Office 365. It's provided by some other vendor. Your customer doesn't have to know that. You can go and start offering that product immediately. You just subscribe to it, and now you're getting detections from that, from like anomalous usage, like all kinds of really great detections. So it allows you to go from zero, right? The customer asks you, hey, could you do that? To just get back to them with a price, because you know exactly how it's being priced, and you can go really, really quickly and start offering that product. And this is going to be a huge differentiator. There's a ton of these opportunities for differentiators. LimaCharlie, I mentioned the extensions, have a ton of different extensions for types of capabilities that you just need But you may not want to go and implement and, for yourself. Hey, you feel like you need static file analysis. Well, we're not selling you some, magic checkbox that says, oh yeah, you're good, you're protected via file analysis, whatever that means. No, we're just making it really available, easy for you to go in the marketplace and subscribe to the Strelka, which is a system by Target, open source system to do file analysis, fully managed, just taken care of for you. You might want to say, hey, I've heard of this idea of leveraging a lot more detections based on executables, right? All kinds of executables in my environment. That's great. You can just go and enable binlib. Binlib is actually free on LimaCharlie. And what it will do is it will keep a copy per tenant of every single executable it has ever seen. It will indexing with metadata for you, and it will make it available for you to scan as well using Yara. So now you might even be able to start, selling a whole new product related to that by being able to offer that capability to your customers. The day that something happens, you have this retroactive hunting through everything that happened on that tenant before. So this is kind of a whirlwind tour that really is aimed to give you a clear view of why LimaCharlie is built for service providers. And I hope I really managed to get this across. Like, this isn't a random platform that just happens that we're kind of trying to get some service providers. The final part of all of this, of my story, is maybe I've done all this and, this was my incident response. And maybe you didn't convert it to an MDR. Well, with a previous vendor, maybe you signed a contract. You really thought you were going to get them and you signed a year contract. And now you're kind of like stuck and you have to eat that cost. Or there is a minimum, right? Oh, well, there was a 500 endpoint minimum. That customer's 200. I didn't have a choice. You've, vastly overpaid. With LimaCharlie, there is no minimum. There is no maximum. Everything is available on demand. If you want to add a new tenant with 5 endpoints because it's a tiny IR, go for it. Our pricing is transparent. If you need 20,000 endpoints right now, you can get it right now as well. The multi-tenancy translates all the way into billing. So from a billing perspective, again, another kind of differentiator, right? If your vendor gives you a single invoice for your 500 customers, and it's all just globbed together because it's a weird contractor trying to sign every year, LimaCharlie will be incredibly refreshing. So you get an invoice per tenant, and you get an invoice rolled up to you as an organization. So you get the best of both worlds. You get to see, hey, here's the bill, I have for LimaCharlie this month. And here's the breakdown for every one of my customers, what exactly I'm going to be paying. We have a few different ways of doing billing as well. So we have pure on demand. We now have a simplified billing as well. So, one price per endpoint that includes all of the retention. So get in touch with us if you're interested by that. But the idea is we bill you per second. We bill you per tenant. Again, right? It's kind of like a cloud provider. It's hard to argue against that value to be able to say, I spent a week and a half on that IR and I paid for a week and a half for that IR, nothing else. So the billing story works out really well as well. Getting started. So get in touch with us. We have a community, so community.limacharlie.com. If you want to get in touch with us, there's a huge community, people, discussing, sharing things. This is a very open platform, very community driven, right? We get a lot of people that really love LimaCharlie and help us make it a special thing. We also have a bunch of different events that are coming up. So we're doing different workshops at a couple different places. We're also doing a happy hour at RSA if you're coming to San Francisco. We have Dublin. We have First Con in Copenhagen. So lots of good ways to get started with LimaCharlie. We have a community edition. So you can go today and create a tenant on your own, and even play with it. We encourage you, if you're a service provider, get in touch with us. We'll help you. Look, we're not here to try to sell you this crazy bundle. We're just here to help you figure out what's the best way, the easiest way for you to, to shift all of your nightmare infrastructure into a really nice, fully managed platform. So thank you for your time today, and we'll see you around.